I was in Saigon in February of 1968, and the Tet Offensive took most of us by surprise. Some people think Tet was just that first night. It wasn't. It went on, block by block, and day after day. We were still operating inside Saigon, doing reaction missions mostly, clearing some neighborhoods, and a lot of it was violent door-to-door fighting. On this particular morning, we were told an ARVN unit was pinned down near a government complex. They'd been hit earlier and lost radio contact. Our mission was to go in, find them, and help get them out. Nobody liked that. We were tired of sticking our necks out for them. We'd been doing most of the fighting by then, and losing too many guys. Some ARVN units would actually fight, but most would freeze up or run. We always seemed to be bailing them out. By that point in Tet, patience was wearing thin. We geared up and moved out. The briefing was short, and as usual, the information was bad. They gave us a rough area, a few blocks wide. No clear enemy strength, no clear friendly positions. Just, they're in there somewhere. We went in on foot. Vehicles were drawing fire all over the city by then, and nobody wanted to ride into an ambush in the back of a truck. The city looked different than it had before Tet. More damage, more debris, fewer people moving around. The civilians that were still out just watched and tried to stay out of the way. We began taking small arms fire early on. One of our guys, Ramos, took a round through the shoulder. It spun him and dropped him, but he stayed conscious. We dragged him back behind a wall and got pressure on the wound. We fired back into the building. We couldn't see the shooter. After about a minute, the firing stopped. A couple streets later, we turned down a narrower road that should have taken us closer to where the ARVN were supposed to be. I didn't like the looks of that building, and I couldn't explain why. I just had a bad feeling. The shooting started almost immediately. Multiple rifles from farther down the street. We backed out and took cover. That's when we lost our first man. He was behind me. I didn't see him get hit, but I heard him go down. When I turned, he was already on the ground and not moving. The squad leader checked him and shook his head. That was it. At that point, we still hadn't found the ARVN unit, and we already had one wounded and one killed, and the anger began to set in. As usual, we were doing the work and paying a high price for it. We pushed in further and began to hear a sustained battle ahead. The ARVN unit was pinned in a courtyard, and I recall a cemetery nearby. I believe their officer had been killed, along with several soldiers. But the interpreter we had was basically useless. We took positions alongside them and returned fire. Enemy fire was steady but not overwhelming. Mostly small arms, some grenades. One of our guys, Miller, was moving between cover when he got hit in the chest. He went down hard. We dragged him behind a low wall and worked on him. His breathing wasn't good. At that point, the mission stopped being about ARVN. It became about not losing any more of our own people. We called for air support. That would take a little time. The ARVN weren't doing much. Some fired, and some just stayed behind cover. We tried to get them ready to move once the pressure lifted. They wouldn't commit. Nobody yelled. Nobody threatened. They just didn't move. The enemy fire was picking up, and I remember the doc saying Miller was gone. Nobody said anything. We just covered him and kept watching our sectors. When the aircraft finally came in, it was quick. One run. Rockets into the intersection feeding the courtyard. The firing stopped almost immediately. That was the moment. That was when everyone should have moved. We waved the ARVN out, yelled, pointed, tried again. They didn't move. The NCO shook his head and said something about orders, or no orders. Hard to tell. Either way, they stayed put. Our squad leader didn't argue. He made the call to pull out. We had already done more than enough for this mission. We weren't going to lose anyone else standing still in a courtyard. We took our dead and wounded and began pulling out. We took some small arms fire on the way out, but nothing serious. Nobody followed us. We made it back without further contact. Later on, higher headquarters called it a successful mission. They said we located the ARVN unit and reduced pressure on them. That was true, technically. What they didn't say was that we went in bitter, took casualties, and when it was time to move, the people we went in for froze right where they were. That kind of thing happened regularly during the Vietnam War, and that day, like many others, American soldiers paid the price. When I look back on Tet now, it seems like a nightmare. We lost a lot of guys, and now it makes me angry. That mission stuck with me because it was such a waste. And there were many missions like that, but we fought hard and did what we had to do. I'm proud of the men I served with. These are guys that stuck their necks out for people they didn't know in a place they would rather not have been. As for Vietnam, I don't think about it every day, but I can never forget it either. During the Vietnam War, young men learned who they really were and what they are capable of, good and bad. And you carried that with you when you came home.